Southern Ontario sports fans. Thank you for checking out the Sportsline Podcast on the CHCH and Parrot Media platforms. I'm Bubba O'Neil. As you know, we love to hype sports in the Golden Horseshoe, and today the Ontario Hockey League takes center stage with the start of the always exciting second season, folks. Two local teams are in contention.
O'Brien brings the puck down again. He'll spin back to Protz with space. Scores! Owen Protz! It's 6-5 on the bullet from the blue liner.
Robertson plays it to Patterson. It's a 2-on-1 with Zada. Riley Patterson with a shot early and a save. Rebound. They score! They score! Ethan Zada's won it in overtime.
The voice of the Brantford Bulldogs is Reed Duthie, and the voice of the Niagara IceDogs is Steve Clark, who joins us to talk playoff hockey on the Sportsline Podcast. Stevie, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
You were blowing off the top there.
You know what? I was so excited. And the IceDogs have won a ton of games in overtime this year, but that one because it's Charlie Robertson, who happens to be my daughter's favorite goalie. She's got jersey and everything.
Okay.
And the fact that he got an assist on the goal in his overage, final game in the regular season caused me to, let's just say, loosen up the old lungs a little bit.
It's good. You sounded great, both of you. Hey, we wish Reed could join us as well, too, to talk about the Bulldogs. You are certainly well equipped. You've seen enough about the Bulldogs where you can talk about both teams. And, hey, let's first of all start this way. The OHL had a magnificent season. And I think right now in our area as well, too, even if you add in Guelph, there are some serious contenders for to get to the end of the line.
Yeah, you know what? It really has been a great season for the Ontario Hockey League, and that's despite the fact they didn't, for the first time in forever, didn't have a 50-goal scorer or didn't have a 100-point scorer. The winner of the scoring title was Klepov of Saginaw with 97 points. Merrick Van Acker, who, very familiar to Bulldog fans, had 47 goals, I believe, to lead the Ontario Hockey League. So, yeah, but despite that, though, a lot of great teams, a lot of great contenders. Brantford is at the top of the list, and I think that's the team that everybody's looking for. But you know what? It's the playoffs. Why not look for an underdog? Look for somebody to pull the upset special. The IceDogs, I think, are actually, not to tip my hand too much, primed for a really good series. And Guelph is hosting the Memorial Cup next year. So, they want to put forth a good showing.
Let's start with the Bulldogs, who, for the most part, were the top dogs for most of the season. Kind of hung around that top 10 in the CHL for a long time. In fact, they were number one for some periods of time. But before we get into the playoff series, they've dipped to number 6 in the CHL rankings. Now, I'm not saying rankings mean anything. It's just a bunch of opinions. But are you surprised to see them? Everett Silvertips are number 1. Are you surprised to see them sitting at number 1, say number 6 going into the postseason?
I don't pretend to be an expert on the Western Hockey League and the Q, but I was surprised to see Brantford at number 6. And then you had Kitchener at 7, Ottawa at 9. I think it's been a long time since you've seen OHL teams ranked so low in the national rankings. But the Bulldogs especially surprised me because, as you said, they were number 1 and they were fairly consistent all year long. Their dips weren't like anything that was a cause for alarm. And they also came in and around a time in which they were losing, players to the World Juniors. And then they were relatively consistent and the best team in the Ontario Hockey League. So I was a little bit surprised. I'm sure there were other factors at play. And I'm pretty sure that the Madhouse on Market Street is probably a little bit madder to be number 6 and they want to prove something. And that's a very dangerous place to be if you're the opposition of the Bulldogs, if you've got a talented team that's a little bit angry.
About 5 games remaining. I guess about game 62, 63, they sealed the deal on top spot. 48, 10, and 10, if you want to put it that way. They will play the 8th-seeded Sudbury Wolves in a series that they dominated in terms of the season series. I believe it was 4-love.
Yeah. I don't think they're thrilled about having to go up to Sudbury, to make that trip up there and play games 3 and 4 there. But you know what? You hand what the playoffs give you. And Brantford, they're pro-mentality. Jay McKee, pro-mentality coach. They've got Ryan Kuwabera, very experienced coach. And then when you start about all the talent that Brantford has, it's incredible. And you could see how much talent Brantford had by the players they sat in the last game against Brampton with the Jake O'Briens and and the Merrick Van Ackers and the Adam Juraseks and Benak and on and on and on. Caleb Malhotra played, but he's a part of that too. I don't see Brantford having any trouble with Sudbury, and Sudbury really, to their credit, turned their season around. They were last place. They were going nowhere. They fixed their goaltending situation. They did improve their lot towards the end of the season, but their reward is getting the Brantford Bulldogs, and at least they'll get a couple playoff dates up in Sudbury.
Well, building the program, I guess that's the way they're going to be looking at it. But, you're right. When you talk about the Bulldogs, you have a look. 5 of the top 15 scorers in the league hail from the Brantford Bulldogs. And you take a look at their stars, and you talk about Merrick Van Acker leading the Ontario Hockey League, 47 goals. This is a star-driven team. Let's start with Van Acker and what you see from him.
Well, Van Acker, who a pick of the Chicago Blackhawks, by the way, and a first-round pick, is just one of those guys. He's a natural scorer who's able to kind of fit in and get to those places to score, and he's got that great chemistry with Jake O'Brien as well. And O'Brien, who is a little bit more of a distributor than he is a scorer, is able to find Van Acker, and Van Acker, he just has that great quick release. He gets the shot moving in a hurry. He's got great vision of the ice, and he's just, one of those guys who you put on page 1 of your scouting report, but then you realize that there could be 5 other people who could be on page 1 of that scouting report. But he's an outstanding player. And I said Chicago Blackhawks struck gold with Nick Lardis, who made his NHL debut this year. I think they'll be the same with Merrick Van Acker over the next couple of years. Well,
O'Brien, as you said, great distributor of the puck. I thought he was a little bit more of a scorer when he first started out with the Bulldogs, but like you said, he's really turned into that distributor, can score, captain, leadership abilities as well too, which I think guys at the top level of the NHL, they love seeing those leaders. Let's go to Caleb Malhotra, who's I guess going to have a lot of eyes on him in this postseason, as some people believe he will be a top 5 selection in this year's NHL draft.
Very bare minimum top 10, and he could elevate into that top 5 status if he's able to have a strong playoff. And with the Bulldogs primed for a long playoff run, that gives Caleb Malhotra an opportunity to star. Now, he's not on the top line because you've got O'Brien and you've got Van Acker as part of that top line, but the way that he can complement those guys and play different roles, and he can showcase himself as an all-round player, it's his opportunity to really creep up from the top 10 into that top 5 with a good playoff run, because he's got everything working for him. He is a highly skilled player. He's actually a fairly experienced player, somebody who came from the BCHL, and of course he's got the NHL bloodlines, being the son of Manny Malhotra, and he's just an outstanding all-round talent. And he came in with a Bulldog team that was already stacked, and for him to put up the point totals he did, I believe he was in excess of 85 to 90. It is a credit to him. And very, very talented player. And you just look at him again. I don't get a chance to look at things from a scout size, from the play-by-play, but you take a look at him, and he's just got it all.
Speaking of got it all, when you have that much talent up front, a lot of times it seems like there's a sacrifice.
Yes.
In the fact that great forwards, defense shaky, goaltending shaky. Not the case here. The Bulldogs defense locked solid, and they have a pair of goaltenders. I don't know who they're going to start. I mean, both of these guys have outstanding numbers.
Yeah, you know what? I'm on the bandwagon that I actually think that David Egorov might be a slightly better goaltender than Ryerson Leenders. And Ryerson Leenders is very, very good. I had a chance to go watch Brantford Niagara play in Brantford on Wednesday, my first time down to that arena since they did some work on it. And just watching Ryerson Leenders, how quick he is, like with the pads. He's got a great glove hand. He had a little trouble playing the puck at times, but really somebody who you can make a long run with. But I think David Egorov is one of those goaltenders that flies a little bit under the radar, and he is very, very good. And the toughest thing to be is to be a backup, right? Because you have to be prepared to play at any time. Sometimes the schedule isn't with you when you play, and he's just been outstanding. And I actually think the East Conference as a whole has a number of really, really, really good goaltenders, and that duo of Leenders and Egorov really stack up amongst the best. But Egorov is my sleeper, so if you ever see, I think Ryerson Leenders will start the playoffs, but I don't think Brantford will have any qualms or any issues about going to Egorov if the situation dictates it.
Well, they're almost even, so I would think that would work well. If you do that goalie tandem, obviously each one of them want to be the starter. I think it can only be natural. But I think each one of them wouldn't be offended if either one of them gets to start.
No, you can't be that way, right? Because you have to. I mean, listen. I know, being a goalie parent, it's that you're on the same team. But at the same time, though, you're always looking and seeing how that other goalie is playing, because it's like, oh, if there's a little bit of a slip-up, maybe it's my opportunity to shine. So you're not rooting against your goalie partner, but there is that friendly competition. But generally speaking, when you get to the higher levels, there's such a respect amongst the goaltenders, and generally speaking, they're very happy if the other person gets the opportunity and they succeed, and know that, well, he's doing really, really well, but my opportunity might come. I need to be ready. And I think that's the perfect approach and the best attitude to have for goaltenders at this level.
Look, I want to get your Stevie selections for the East and the West at the very end, but I mean, we can't dip into this. I think you've kind of already hinted at it. You think this is going to be all Bulldogs. We look at the Bulldogs, and they were kind of favorites last year, and then got stopped by Barrie, which I think it was in six last year, which some people were a little surprised at. Do you see the Bulldogs at least getting to the third round this season?
Yeah, I do, because I just look at, if they, assuming they get through Sub-Ray, and I think I've said it's going to be a sweep, they do reseed afterwards, and if there's no upsets, they get the winner of Peterborough and North Bay, and I just think that they stack up better. You know, they're better and more deeper than both of those teams, and both of those teams are deep teams. And, you know, Peterborough, again, I talk about the goaltending. They've got probably, arguably, one of the top goaltenders, not in the Eastern Conference, but the league in Easton Rye, who had all but one of their victories this year. And then you've got North Bay now with a good two goalie tandem with Jack Lisson and Mike McIver. But I still think the Bulldogs, they're destined to be into the third round, and whoever it is they face, I would put them as the odds-on favorite. But anything less than going to the OHL Championship would be a disappointment for this team with the talent level and the roster that they've built.
Let's talk about the team that you follow for most of the season here, and that is the Niagara IceDogs. And before we get into what they are going to be up to in the postseason, a general assessment about the franchise. I kind of feel like, and I may use the wrong word here, but I'll use it anyway, I feel like a lot of the demons that they've had in the past are gone, and that this Niagara team are on to something for not just now, but for the future as well.
It was a scandal-free year. There were no headlines off the ice and away from the ice. Everything that was dealt with the IceDogs was on the ice. So I do think that they're starting to turn that around, and I think that the fan base and the community are starting to rally around the IceDogs. I look at I'm just going to tell you, the New Year's Eve skate that they have after the New Year's Eve game, in which the players skate with the fans. And I just noticed that the players are almost always good with the fans, but it just seemed that they were excessively good and friendly and accessible. And, you know, you'll see a couple players here and there who might big time the event and kind of go through the motions and things like that. But I saw every single player was smiling, happily taking pictures, signing autographs. I mean, Ryan Robrick at that time, he didn't skate after, but he sat, by the boards, and he drew a big crowd, of course, and was just so friendly and smiling and taking pictures. Those are the little things that I think build that trust. On the ice, they were basically, you didn't know what you were going to find. They didn't win a game in November, and then they started to play well, and then they dipped again, and then they finished the season strong. There's a little bit of the inconsistency that way. But off the ice, they're a great team. On the ice, they looked like they were more together, and I do credit General Manager and Director of Player Operations, Frank Evola, who came in and kind of rebuilt that roster, and Chris Barch, who surprisingly, as a first-year coach, and again, I was a little bit hesitant seeing Chris Barch come in, even though he's a former NHLer. They've kind of installed kind of an attitude about them with the IceDogs, I think, that will help them not only this year, but going forward.
That's great news for the franchise. We've always said it, and maybe a little bit more when the Bulldogs were in Hamilton, because of the closer proximity, that when the IceDogs and Bulldogs are both good, it's fabulous. And we saw it a couple of times, and they ended up, I think, in that monumental series, which I think was won in 6 by Hamilton at the time. And I'll just remember, man, that was just great hockey. So kudos to the franchise over there in Niagara that they've got some things going. Let's get into the Niagara IceDogs this season, and I think you look at their stars, and I think you first comes to mind is Kevin He, and he's not there this year. Yet they hung around and still were contenders to make the postseason. Were you surprised about that?
No, not really. I thought the team was deep enough. I was a little surprised when I heard the rumblings that Kevin He was going to be traded. And when he was traded, it was a little bit of a shock because he's a Niagara day one guy. I believe he's in his 4th year, was playing very, very well. But I also think that they wanted to reward him in likely what it will be his last junior year, with a chance to go to a team that can make a run. And so he went to Flint, where, by the way, he scored 25 goals in 32 games for a very, very good Flint Firebirds team.
Wow.
But he was the captain. He was the face. But I get the sense that all of the off-ice turmoil may have worn on him like a little bit. So I think they really did him a solid. Of course, people were like, well, how can you trade your best player, but then go pick up a player like a Ho-Chi Vong, who they got from Oshawa, a big NHL drafted defenseman? And I just want to tell fans, you don't have to either go all in or sell everything but the hockey sticks that are left lying around. You can add, you can sell off a player, and you can still be a good, decent franchise. And I think that's what they want to get Vong back for next year for his OHL season, for his overage season, excuse me. He is scheduled to go to the NCAA. I'm hoping the IceDogs can talk him out of that, and he can stay for his overage season, and then off he goes to the pros and with San Jose.
They've got them some leaders as well, too. It starts with Izan Zada. We heard saw him off the top as well, too. They've got some solid players. So as we look at some of their top talent right now, I'll ask this first. Ryan Rubrick, obviously he had the lower body injury. Is he going to be available?
Well, that's the big question, and I haven't got a definitive answer really either way. I've heard that he hasn't started skating, which doesn't lend itself. I've heard from a few sources that he's not ready, but I've heard from other ones say that he is good to go. It's a very closely guarded secret, and I'm not keeping any secrets here, by the way. I just don't know, and I can tell you it's an ankle injury, and he was in a walking boot, and those are tough ones to come back from, obviously, if you're a forward and push off and edge work and all of those little difference makers and things like that. So his status is up in the air. I would be surprised if he plays to start the playoffs. But it also wouldn't surprise me because he's also got something to prove. Somebody who started off in the top 10 in the NHL draft rankings, didn't have a great start to the season, slipped kind of all the way to mid-second round, but at the same time, though, his last 25, 30 games before he got injured were first-round caliber. It was the old Ryan Robrick with the shot. He was roaming around. He was distributing. He was even elevating physically. So IceDogs can't count on him, I would say, but it would be a pleasant surprise to see him back.
I would believe you can count on Riley Patterson. 40 goals. Did anyone see that coming?
Well, he's a talented player. I didn't think he would be that dominant, to tell you the truth. I did know, like, Vancouver, a 4th-round pick, and Vancouver signed him. And you don't often see that with 4th-round picks that early. So he's already got the pro game, and he's got the pro mentality. By the way, local tie-in, I found out that he is the son of who was then Michelle Coleman. Now I believe she is Michelle Patterson, who used to play McMaster Marauders women's basketball and was a coach for the team in the mid-90s. So I've just found that out.
Only Steve Clark can figure that one out.
I found that out on New Year's Eve. So I'll always root for somebody who's got a McMaster connection, no matter how tenuous it is. But Riley Patterson is the real deal. I mean, I was so happy he got 2 goals and ended up with 40 on the season, and he just keeps elevating. No Robrick, no problem. Whoever he plays with, he makes them better.
Playoffs is that kind of, I think, always these weird 2 versus 7s. We sometimes see, it's like the NCAA tournament where that 2 versus 15, weird things happen sometimes. Barrie Colts are a really, really good team. Went deep last year, as we talked about, beating the Bulldogs. IceDogs, I guess they lose the season series 4 games to 2, but we're seemingly competitive in every game.
It's the best matchup for Niagara, right? And all these great things I'm going to say about Niagara, I'm still going to pick Barrie, but I'm going to say it's going to be a tough series, right? The 2 wins that Niagara had, both in overtime, both in Barrie. In the home games, in one game early in the season, Niagara had a 5-1 third-period lead and blew it and lost in a shootout. They had a 3-2 lead after 2 periods in a game later in the season, folded and lost 6-3. So what does that tell me? Very, very competitive for a good portion of the game. Third period meltdowns and collapses were actually an issue for Niagara this year. But I think they can stay with the Colts. They stayed with them last year and arguably could have made that a better and closer series had they not had all of the off-ice shenanigans. Plus, Kayshawn Aitchison, who, by the way, could be a Hamilton, star next year for the AHL, because he's an Islanders draft pick, suspended for the first 2 games of the series because not a very smart move for a captain. He got into a fight in a meaningless game against Niagara, exceeded the fight threshold, and is suspended for 2 games. And that might means Niagara's got a better chance of stealing one in Barrie.
You were watching this game. What really happened? Because Aitchison, it's like he's lost his mind.
Yeah, I don't know what was going through his mind, because, I mean, this is somebody who's a pretty smart player, and obviously he's a talented player, and he's one of the most fearsome hitters in the Ontario Hockey League. But I don't know if he didn't know how many fights he had, or whether he thought it wouldn't be a fight if he didn't take his gloves off, but he kind of just lost his cool, and maybe it's just one of those teenager, junior hockey type of actions that really cost them.
Can you tell our fans here what that rule is about fighting in the Ontario Hockey League that would cause him to miss the first 2 games of the postseason?
So you're allowed 3 fights, right? And if you are instigated upon, it doesn't count as a fight. So that one there was an instigator penalty. So for Hayden Reed, who he was fighting against, didn't count as a fight on the fight card, even if he got 5 minutes or whatever it is. But if you exceed 3, then for the 4th, it's a 2-game suspension, and then it increases,
right,
for the more fights that you have. So with that being his 4th, and the fact that he was also the instigator, means that he got an automatic 2-game suspension.
Will that carry into the postseason as well?
Great question. I do not know.
Okay.
I don't think so. But I know if I'm wrong, I'll hear about it. But yeah, but I don't think so. I do think they kind of clean the slate a little bit in the playoffs.
All right, so here we are with this team here. Another thing that we talk about, and it's funny that you talk about these sort of late third period collapses, overtime, the goaltending for Niagara. It seems like it's a one-man band. Is the Russian good enough, Yarmolenko good enough to be that guy to steal a game, as we always talk about in the postseason?
Oh, he's good enough to steal a game. He stole the last game in Barrie. I think he made some 46 saves when Niagara won 3-2. And I wouldn't write off Charlie Robertson, the other goaltender, who has played very well after, I would say, a pretty slow start to the year, to the point in which I was wondering, is he going to last the whole year as an overage goalie? You might want to look at somebody who you want to develop. But he turned his season around from somebody who's coming off of major surgeries in the offseason to play. I do think it'll be Yarmolenko's net to start. He does have the ability to steal a game or 2. He's an outstanding goaltender. He's kind of in that Bobrovsky style of being real quick. He's 6'1", but he's real quick down low. He's got a little bit of flash to his game as well. He seems to rise to the occasion. Yes, he can steal a game against the Barrie Colts or any other team. He's proven that he can do it. Again, he's part of a deep goaltending core in the East, and Barrie's got Ben Harebik, who's really, really good. And even their backup, Arvin Jaswan, I believe his name is, he was somebody who I think he lost 3 or 4 games, so a good goaltending battle. But yeah, Yarmolenko is somebody who came in as an unknown, but certainly has won over a lot of people.
Maybe not an X factor, but who are the top dogs for Barrie that Niagara have to take care of? Baudouin, I guess?
Well, Baudouin, and when Aitchison comes back, I mean, they're kind of 1 and 1A. When Barrie was struggling early in the year in that game they beat Niagara, it seemed like Baudouin and Aitchison didn't leave the ice. That's how important they are. Baudouin he's one of those guys, pro body, pro mentality, assistant captain of the team, could probably fit in and play in the NHL in the next year or 2.
Wow.
And we talked about Aitchison. So those are the guys that are, kind of the top ones, but they've got some great under-the-radar guys. Ben Wilmot, who they picked up from London, was an outstanding acquisition, over a point a game. You add in Brad Gardner, overager, who played a lot of his career with Ottawa, over 30 goals for a career high. They're a very, very deep team. Marty Williamson, who fans fans around here should know very well, who moved up to the general manager spot, built a very, very good team, and he has one of the most talented young coaches in Dylan Smoskowitz, who in his first year, led this Barrie team to a division title and a number 2 seed. I have nothing but the deepest of respect, and their defense is it's just mean, Bubba. Like Aitchison is just one of a few guys who plays a nasty game, and those are the types of games that win playoffs. Like Justin Hanser, Gabriel Eliasson, who's an Ottawa second-round pick, 6'7", not a very nice person on the ice. So yeah, Niagara's they're gonna be physically beat up in this series.
Yeah, I saw just in scouting sort of this series here. It's on X. There's a hit reel for Aitchison.
Oh,
like he's right on the line.
Yep.
Like I'm talking about some serious like 1970s style collisions, and like it's right on the line, like of being like I'm saying like aggressive. I'll just leave it at very, very aggressive, and I'm sure that NHL coaches and general managers are salivating at a guy like that. And like you said, it's of course the New York Islanders and the pairing that of maybe him and Schaefer one day. It's almost mind-blowing.
Yeah, you imagine they got both of those guys in the first round, right? I was live in Barrie for Game 2, about 10 rows up, when Kashan Aitchison probably threw one of the most brutal hits I've seen in a lot of years of watching OHL hockey against Ivan Gallianoff of the Niagara IceDogs. Clean as a whistle, shoulder. Yes, was there a little bit of head contact? You can't help but have a little bit of head contact. But to me, it was just one of those brutal, devastating, open ice hits. Gallianoff actually came back in the game and scored and played the next game before sitting out the last couple because it was deemed that he did have a concussion. But yeah, the one thing I think, again, if I could put on a scout's hat with Aitchison, is that the hits have to be timely. And they can't take him out of the play, because you can get away with that in the Ontario Hockey League, but as you move up into the pro level, if you nail a guy but the play is still going past you and you put yourself out of position, then that's something to look at too. But everything else, he's one of my favorite players, and he scores. I think he scored almost 30 goals this year. He set Barrie Colts records for scoring. So he's got it all. And the Islanders, and he's the second best defensive prospect because they've got Schaefer.
Right. Well, Patrick Waugh, again, got to be pretty excited about getting his hands on and turning him into, from that Ontario Hockey League into an NHL player, and it's coming soon.
By the way, I have to say I'm glad to be back, because the last time I was here, I offered up the gem that Matt Schaefer could use another year in junior, and I thought you'd ban me from the building after that.
I mean, you weren't the only one that said that, right? Because it is, he played less than 20 games, right? Because of the injury, the shoulder injury. He didn't have a lot of action.
No.
But, I mean, can I ask you this? Because you've seen a lot of talent and a lot of fine players in the league over a couple of decades of, calling games. Have you ever seen a player like Schaefer go from one level to the next and look so incredibly comfortable leading an NHL team on the back line? We always talk about it, that it takes some years for defensemen to get up to National Hockey League speed. He looks like he's been there for a decade.
I look at this. I think it was the 2008 draft. It was the golden age kind of defenseman, because in order, it was Drew Doughty, it was Zach Bogosian, Alex Pietrangelo, Luke Shan, all drafted in a row from 2 to 5. And none of those guys, they had good first seasons, but nobody has stepped in like Schaefer. I looked in the game that they played against Chicago. He played over 31 minutes. Wow. 31 minutes. That's how important Patrick Waugh and that Islander brain trust and his teammates, that's how much they believe in him, and that's how much trust they have in him. It really is a season for the ages. And for the first time, I believe it was Steve Simmons mentioned the name Bobby Orr. And it's not as far-fetched as you think, just at that age.
It's a pretty good company to be in.
Yeah.
We put you to the test last year, and you did very well, actually.
Okay.
It's time for Stevie's selections.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Right. Okay, let's go to the East board and have a look at the 4 postseason series. And folks, obviously, we're talking about Niagara, we're talking about Brantford for the most part, but you'll hear a little bit about your squads here as well, too. We've already established that the Bulldogs should be having a laugher against the Wolves. Barrie in 6, but you've given us plenty of meat to chew on about the IceDogs making this a very, very competitive series. I really did like Kingston this year, but you like Ottawa in 5.
Well, that's to make up for the fact that every single person who claims to be something of an expert in junior hockey missed on the Ottawa 67s. And I was firmly in the camp, and I'll say it right now, that I had thought the game had passed Dave Cameron by. When he was not successful with the World Juniors and he was coaching Ottawa in that second half of the season and they missed the playoffs, I thought, well, they're going to move on from this guy. The game has passed him by. Lo and behold, though, they actually challenged Brantford at times for the league lead and a possible number 1 seed. They also came up with a goalie find in Ryder Fedorov, and remember that name as a free agent signing who is in his draft year, who was outstanding. He and Jade Nelson combined for the best goals against average. Ottawa won me over. And here's a name to practice, and here's a name to remember, Cohen Eshkogagan. Who is a second-year defenseman, but not draft eligible until next year, is a point-a-game defenseman already.
Wow.
So they are a very talented group in Ottawa, and they're playing that structured system. And you know, Bubba, that does win in the playoffs.
There's no doubt about that. Discipline is so important. Your last game, bit of an upset special. Here. I like the Petes. You like the Battalion.
I've said don't sleep on North Bay, right? Ryan Olahan has done a great job with that team. It truly is a sum of their parts team because nobody really has over like 40 points. Like you rolled out the first 3 lines and it's almost like exactly the same. They have like 9 forwards who have double figures in goals and they just play a good, strong game again. Outstanding goaltending. Jack Lisson kind of emerged as a star. Mike McIver, who was the starting goalie, was injured for a lot of the second half, came back at the end. So they've got a 1-2 goalie tandem. And I believe it's a rarity as both are right-catching goaltenders. You don't see that too often.
No.
So I just think North Bay in 7, they've just got that intangible. And the Petes have been a little tiny bit wonky. I mean, they've got one of the best goalies. I keep saying this again. Eastern Rye has won all but 1 game for them this year. I just see as a coin flip, and when I flipped that coin, it came up North Bay. If you ask me in 10 minutes, it might not be that way, but right now I'm still staying with North Bay.
Okay, so let's quickly get to the West then.
Yes.
I don't want you to change here. Let's get to the West, and the Kitchener Rangers had an outstanding season, but you think they might get a little push from Saginaw?
Yeah, Saginaw is a really top-heavy team, right? They've got a goaltender who plays almost all their games in Stepan Shurigan, who really did well against a team that didn't have a whole lot of defensive help for him. But they've got Klepov, they've got Barabanov, and they've got Zhilkin. And Zhilkin's another one of those guys who is, Dimi Zhilkin is another one of those guys who's draft eligible next year. Those are 3 forwards that I believe produced almost half their goals.
Wow.
And I just think that with how good Saginaw's power play can be, is that they can steal a game, from Kitchener. But Kitchener, I mean, they added Sam O'Reilly and Jared Woolley from the London Knights, and those were 2 great acquisitions. Once they didn't realize they were getting the Memorial Cup, they did a quick pivot to say, we want to contend this year, and it's worked out splendidly for them. So I'm still saying in 5, but I'm giving Saginaw a game.
I thought the Windsor Spitfires, I thought they were kind of very, very consistent in the West this season, near the top. Again, Guelph Storm, maybe a little bit of a push, but the Spits should probably be the favorites in the series.
Yeah, some injury concerns for Windsor, but it looks like Villeneuve and Greentree, 2 of their top players, are going to be back. Ethan Belchez, who is a top 15 pick, local as well. He's from Oakville. Unfortunately, broken clavicle. He's out for the year, so they're going to miss him. Guelph has been all over the map, right? They've gone through periods in which they've looked great, and then they stumbled badly down the stretch with injuries. But they're the Memorial Cup hosts next year, so I know they want to build some playoff experience, but Windsor does win that one fairly handily.
I love this next series here. The Firebirds and the attack. I think, again, you like in 5. I think this could go a little longer.
It could, because, Owen Sound, again, they started off the year so well, and then they fell completely off the map for a good portion of the second half of the season, and then kind of came back at the end and pushed their way to that 6th place finish. I just think Flint, with that the offensive talent, adding Kevin He to Nathan Aspinall and Jacob Battaglia and a couple of the other players they have. And they got Mason Vicari playing net, who had an outstanding season for them. They're kind of my sleeper team in the West. And I do think Owen Sound can give them a good series, especially because it's not easy to play in that building up there, right? The Bayshore is one of the great fan bases. And I think that Owen Sound talented team, they could give them a push, but ultimately it's going to be Flint's depth that will win.
I kind of thought London were going to rebuild this year. Here they are again in the postseason. I mean, they're like a machine that they seem to get there. And I mean, we're talking about last year's champs. They're in there, and the way you're calling it, it's going to be a war against the Sioux.
It really is. It really is the feature series of the first round, especially because London was able to eclipse Sault Ste. Marie for home ice advantage, right? The Sioux had a win and get home ice advantage game against Windsor, the last game of the regular season, and Windsor won that game 5-3, and that's why the first two games will be up in London. And yeah, you think you're trading, Sam O'Reilly, you're trading Jared Woolley, you're trading Ben Wilmot, like all these guys who are top-end talent, and you're thinking, this is what a Dale Hunter rebuild is. You win home ice advantage.
It's nuts.
But they again, great goaltending. Sebastian Gatto was a goaltender that actually kind of usurped Alexei Medvedev, who is the NHL draft pick of Vancouver, to give them very, very good goaltending. However, Sault Ste. Marie got Lucas Fisher from Sarnia, and they got Carter George, of course, from Owen Sound, and they kind of pushed all their chips in and said, okay, we think we can make a run this year, and they may not make it out of the first round. Carter George did not play very well against London last year when he was with the Owen Sound attack. Obviously, he's got a better defense around him. They've got Brady Martin, who's a top 5 pick of Nashville, and then they've got Chase Reed, who everybody thinks is going to be a top 5 pick. But I just think they're that little bit deeper, and they'll win in 7.
Maybe you can relate this to our folks here. If you're London or any of these teams that have to going to this, people forget. You got to go look at a map every once in a while.
Yep.
Sault Ste. Marie is a long trip. Is that an advantage?
I think so.
Can it be?
I think so.
Yeah.
Listen, I mean, London goes up to Sault Ste. Marie a couple times a year, right? Just like Brantford goes up to Sudbury a couple times a year. But at the same time, though, it's a completely different routine. It's a long bus ride. You're away out of your own beds. You're in a hotel for probably 2 or 3 days because you're playing 2 games up there. A little different. It used to be the old 2-3-2, right? So you could be up there for close to a week.
Yeah.
I can remember when Ottawa came here, and it's like, okay, there's only so many times we can go see Niagara Falls and go on Clifton Hill. Let's get out of here. So yeah, I do think it does make a difference. But I mean, these guys that they're with the young legs and the pro mentality, and they get used to the bus rides, it doesn't affect them that much. But it could be something of an intangible that could tip the scales. Maybe it's in a game with a slow start, or maybe it's in the third period or something like that. So I do think there is something very real to that.
Here we go, folks. Series number 1, the first round of the postseason, and any sport sometimes will produce surprises, some upsets, maybe injuries, controversies. Always entertaining in the Ontario Hockey League, and we talk about this because of the Canadian juniors, because in the pros, there's expectations.
Yes.
In this level of hockey, we got to remember they're kids.
Yep.
Sometimes weird things happen. We see in the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
They're kids.
Yep.
And crazy things can happen sometimes, which makes it such a fun time of the season. The Bulldogs series opens at TD Coliseum. Actually, TD Civic Center on Friday, and you guys get going on Thursday, right?
Thursday in Barrie, Thursday and Saturday up in Barrie, and I believe Tuesday, Thursday in Niagara, a little extra day. I think Niagara wanted one of their games on a Thursday when they play more home games to hopefully help build the old attendance. So, yep, that's when it gets going. It's going to be a ton of fun.
How's the Chops going to the postseason?
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, are you kidding me? You heard me on that. I actually lost my voice a little bit during that game. Apparently, it came back. So the Chops. I make my living with my big mouth, be it in the classroom or on the microphone. So it has to be. And I even stepped in just for fun. We have an awesome parent on my daughter's team who films all the games and then puts some graphics in and uploads it to YouTube. And I called a game.
Wild.
So it was a ton of fun. My daughter Isla was even playing in the game too, and I didn't lose my temper or any bad words didn't come out at all. I just called the game. It was a ton of fun. But the pipes are very good.
Right on. We're looking forward to hearing you on the broadcast here for games 3 and 4, and hopefully a little bit more.
Could always hope, right? Who's going to be who beat Florida in the NCAA tournament
this week? And I can't remember.
Who to be that team.
Yeah, anyone can. Anything can happen. Hey, thanks for joining us. I appreciate your outlook and your expertise on the Ontario Hockey League. As always, my man.
Always love coming here. Thank you.
All right. Hey, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And if you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports. OHL hockey, boy. It's an arena near you. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline podcast, do want to hear from you. Please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button if you have something to say. We always appreciate your comments. Maybe you have some picks. For the outstanding people that make the Sportsline podcast possible, thank you so very much. And we'll see you real soon.